The U.S. intelligence community has reportedly concluded that China intentionally misrepresented its coronavirus numbers.
据报道，美国情报界得出的结论是，中国故意歪曲其冠状病毒编号。
Sonam Chef, Isaac Sure Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, on November 2nd.
2018年11月2日，中国国家主席习近平在北京人民大会堂。
Thomas Peter Getty Thomas Peter /
盖蒂图片社。
The U.S. intelligence community has determined that the Chinese government concealed the extent of its coronavirus outbreak and gave false statistics to other countries, Bloomberg News reported, citing 3 U.S. officials.
彭博新闻社。
Bloomberg News.
援引3名美国官员的话报道称，美国情报机构已确定，中国政府隐瞒了冠状病毒爆发的程度，并向其他国家提供了虚假统计数据。
Officials transmitted a classified report of their findings to the White House last week.
官员们上周向白宫递交了一份有关他们调查结果的机密报告。
Bloomberg described its sources as saying that the report's main conclusion was that China's public reporting of coronavirus cases was intentionally incomplete and that its numbers were fake.
彭博社称其消息来源表示，该报告的主要结论是，中国公开报告冠状病毒病例是故意不完整的，其数字是假的。
China was the epicenter of the novel coronavirus outbreak until last week, when the U.S.'s number of cases surpassed China's.
中国一直是新型冠状病毒爆发的中心，直到上周，美国的病例数量超过了中国。
U.S. and other Western officials have repeatedly expressed skepticism about China's numbers. Residents of Wuhan, where the outbreak originated, have also publicly doubted the government's reporting.
美国和其他西方国家的官员一再对中国的数字表示怀疑。疫情爆发地武汉的居民也公开质疑政府的报告。
Visit Business Insider's homepage for more stories.
更多故事请访问商业内幕的主页。
The U.S. intelligence community has determined that the Chinese government concealed the extent of its coronavirus outbreak and gave false numbers of cases and deaths in the country, Bloomberg News reported on Wednesday, citing 3 U.S. officials.
彭博新闻社。
Bloomberg News.
周三援引3名美国官员的话报道称，美国情报机构已确定，中国政府隐瞒了冠状病毒爆发的程度，并提供了虚假的病例和死亡数字。
Intelligence officials transmitted a classified report of their findings to the White House last week. Bloomberg described its sources as saying that the report's main conclusion was that China's public reporting of coronavirus cases was intentionally incomplete. 2 officials told the outlet that it found that China's numbers were fake.
情报官员上周向白宫递交了一份有关他们调查结果的机密报告。彭博社称其消息来源称，该报告的主要结论是，中国公开报告冠状病毒病例是故意不完整的。2名官员告诉媒体，他们发现中国的数据是假的。
China was the center of the novel coronavirus outbreak until last week, when the U.S.'s number of cases of COVID-19, the illness caused by the virus, surpassed China's. The World Health Organization declared it a pandemic on March 11th.
中国一直是新型冠状病毒爆发的中心，直到上周，美国的新型冠状病毒病例数量超过了中国。世界卫生组织在3月11日宣布这是一场大流行。
As of Wednesday, more than 885,000 people across the globe had been infected and more than 44,000 had died. China had reported 82,361 confirmed cases and 3,316 deaths, according to a database from Johns Hopkins University. The U.S. had reported 190,089 positive cases and 4,102 deaths.
截止周三，全球已有超过 88.5 万人感染，超过 4.4 万人死亡。根据约翰霍普金斯大学卫生组织的数据库，中国已经报告了82361例确诊病例和3316例死亡。 美国报告了19万089例阳性病例和4102例死亡。
The outbreak originated late last year in the city of Wuhan, in China's Hubei province. As more and more people got sick, China's communist government implemented strict lockdowns and ordered residents to stay inside while officials raced to contain the spread of the virus.
去年年底，中国湖北省武汉市爆发了此次疫情。随着越来越多的人患病，中国共产党政府实施了严格的封锁政策，并命令居民待在室内。同时，官员们迅速控制病毒的传播。
Bloomberg reported that there had been significant doubt about the reported coronavirus statistics from the Chinese government, which had repeatedly changed its methodology to track cases.
彭博社报道称，对于中国政府报告的冠状病毒统计数据存在严重的怀疑。中国政府曾多次改变追踪病例的方法。
For instance, the Bloomberg report said, Chinese officials for weeks excluded asymptomatic people from the positive cases count and revised that measure only on Tuesday, adding more than 1,500 cases to its total.
例如，彭博社的报道称，中国官员连续数周将无症状人群排除在阳性病例之外，直到周二才修订了这一指标，使总数增加了1500多例。
U.S. officials have repeatedly accused China of covering up information about its coronavirus cases and of spreading misinformation. China was the first country to know about the risk to the world from this virus, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said at a news briefing last week, and they repeatedly delayed sharing that information with the globe.
美国官员曾多次指责中国隐瞒有关其冠状病毒病例的信息，并散布错误信息。美国国务卿麦克·庞皮欧
Mike Pompeo
上周在新闻发布会上表示，中国是第一个知道这种病毒对世界构成风险的国家，他们一再推迟与全球分享这一信息。
This data set matters, Pompeo reiterated on Tuesday, adding that the strategy for combating the virus depends on the ability to have confidence and information about what has actually transpired.
这个数据集很重要，庞皮欧周二重申，并补充说，抗击病毒的策略取决于对实际发生的情况有信心和信息的能力。
Chinese officials have pushed back on the allegations. Zheng Shuang, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesman, said after Pompeo's comments last week that China had been transparent and shared accurate information with the U.S. and other countries.
中国官员对这些指控进行了反驳。中国外交部发言人耿爽在庞皮欧上周发表讲话后表示，中国一直是透明的，并与美国和其他国家分享了准确的信息。
Dr. Deborah Birx, a State Department immunologist and one of the faces of the White House's coronavirus task force, also suggested on Tuesday that there was a discrepancy between the numbers China reported and its actual cases.
美国国务院免疫学家、白宫冠状病毒工作组成员之一黛博拉·伯克斯博士
Deborah Birx
周二也表示，中国报告的病例数与实际病例数之间存在差异。
She said the medical community used China's data to gauge the scope of the outbreak, initially concluding that it was serious, but smaller than anyone expected. But I think probably we were missing a significant amount of the data, she said, now that we see what happened to Italy and we see what happened to Spain.
她说，医学界利用中国的数据来估计疫情的规模。最初的结论是，疫情很严重。但比任何人预期的都要小，但是我认为我们可能遗漏了大量的数据。他说，现在我们看到了意大利发生了什么，也看到了西班牙发生了什么。
Reuters reported on Sunday that almost a week had passed since a coronavirus case was reported in Wuhan, as new cases flatten across China. But some Wuhan residents have said they think government officials have not accurately counted the deaths.
路透社周日报道称，自从武汉报道冠状病毒病例以来，已经过去了将近1个星期。中国各地的新病例呈平缓趋势， 但一些武汉市民表示，他们认为政府官员没有准确统计死亡人数。
A truck driver in Wuhan told the magazine Kaixin that he delivered about 5,000 urns to a single funeral home over 2 days last week, the South China Morning Post reported on Monday.
据南华早报周一报道，武汉的一名卡车司机告诉财新杂志，他上周花了2天时间向一家殡仪馆运送了大约5000个骨灰盒。
A photo in Kaixin's report, according to the Post, purportedly showed 3,500 urns stacked on the floor of the funeral home.
据华盛顿邮报报道，
Kaixin
报道中的一张照片显示，据称有3500个骨灰盒堆放在殡仪馆的地板上。
The official death toll in Wuhan can't be right, because the incinerators have been working round the clock. One resident who identified himself by his surname, Zhang, told Radio Free Asia last week.
武汉官方公布的死亡人数不可能是正确的，因为焚化炉一直在昼夜不停地工作。一位姓张的居民上周告诉自由亚洲电台。
So how can so few people have died? Zhang asked.
那么为什么这么少的人死了呢？张问道。
Radio Free Asia described some people as saying on social media that Wuhan's funeral homes were handing out 3,500 urns every day. Insider could not independently verify the outlet's reporting, but Radio Free Asia said that at that rate, about 42,000 urns would be given out from March 23 to April 5, when a traditional grave tending festival begins.
自由亚洲电台
Radio Free Asia
称，一些人在社交媒体上说，武汉的殡仪馆每天发放3500个骨灰盒，知情人士无法独立核实这家电台的报道。但自由亚洲电台
Radio Free Asia
表示，按照这个速度，从3月23日到4月5日，约有 4.2 万个骨灰盒被分发出去。4月5日是传统的扫墓节。
Another resident who identified himself by his surname, Mao, also said he thought the official death toll was wrong.
另一位自称姓毛的居民也表示，他认为官方的死亡人数是错误的。
Maybe the authorities are gradually releasing the real figures, intentionally or unintentionally, so that people will gradually come to accept the reality, Mao told Radio Free Asia.
毛在接受自由亚洲电台
Radio Free Asia
采访时说，也许当局是在有意或无意地逐渐公布真实数据，这样人们就会逐渐接受现实。